It is worse, much worse, than you think. The slowness of climate change is a fairy tale, perhaps as pernicious as the one that says it isn't happening at all, and comes to us bundled with several others in an anthology of comforting delusions. That global warming is an Arctic saga, unfolding remotely. That it is strictly a matter of sea level and coastlines, not an enveloping crisis, sparing no place and leaving no life undeformed. That it is a crisis of the natural world, not the human one. That those two are distinct, and that we live today somehow outside or beyond, or at the very least defended against nature, not inescapably within and literally overwhelmed by it. That wealth can be a shield against the ravages of warming. That the burning of fossil fuels is the price of continued economic growth. That growth and the technology it produces will allow us to engineer our way out of environmental disaster. That there is any analog to the scale or scope of this threat in the long span of human history that might give us confidence in staring it down. None of this is true. But let's begin with the speed of change. The Earth has experienced 5 mass extinctions before the one we are living through now, each so complete a wiping of the fossil record that it functioned as an evolutionary reset. The planet's phylogenetic tree first expanding, then collapsing, at intervals like a lung. 86% of all species dead 450 million years ago. 70 million years later, 75%. 125 million years later, 96%. 50 million years later, 80%. 135 million years after that, 75% again. Unless you are a teenager, you probably read in your high school textbooks that these extinctions were the result of asteroids. In fact, all but the one that killed the dinosaurs involved climate change produced by greenhouse gas. The most notorious was 250 million years ago. It began when carbon dioxide warmed the planet by 5 degrees Celsius, accelerated when that warming triggered the release of methane, another greenhouse gas, and ended with all but a sliver of life on Earth dead. We are currently adding carbon to the atmosphere at a considerably faster rate. By most estimates, at least 10 times faster. The rate is 100 times faster than at any point in human history before the beginning of industrialization. And there is already, right now, fully a third more carbon in the atmosphere than at any point in the last 800,000 years, perhaps in as long as 15 million years. There were no humans then. The oceans were more than 100 feet higher. Many perceive global warming as a sort of moral and economic debt, accumulated since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and now come due after several centuries. In fact, more than half of the carbon exhaled into the atmosphere by the burning of fossil fuels has been emitted in just the past 3 decades. Which means we have done as much damage to the fate of the planet and its ability to sustain human life and civilization since Al Gore published his first book on climate than in all the centuries, all the millennia that came before. The United Nations established its climate change framework in 1992, advertising scientific consensus unmistakably to the world. This means we have now engineered as much ruin knowingly as we ever managed in ignorance. Global warming may seem like a distended morality tale, playing out over several centuries and inflicting a kind of Old Testament retribution on the great-great-grandchildren of those responsible, since it was carbon burning in 18th century England that lit the fuse of everything that has followed. But that is a fable about historical villainy that acquits those of us alive today, and unfairly. The majority of the burning has come since the premiere of Seinfeld. Since the end of World War II, the figure is about 85%. The story of the industrial world's kamikaze mission is the story of a single lifetime. The planet brought from seeming stability to the brink of catastrophe in the years between a baptism or bar mitzvah and a funeral.